Thank everybody that's taking the time today to join us. This is our last in our professional services series of webinars for the 2018 year. And very pleased to have our partner Green Cloud Technologies join us for this last session of the year. So Green Cloud Technologies is our go-to partner for hosting. So anyone that's on the call that's looking at possibly transitioning from on-prem infrastructure to a hosted environment for some or all of the infrastructure that you may have, this is the session for you. So advance to the next slide.
Working on that, Brian.
No problem.
Bear with me 1 second. Nope.
All right, thank you. So just a little bit about NSA. Most of you that are on the call are familiar with who we are as either clients or prospects that we've been speaking with, but this gives you a little bit of a breakout as to some of the core competencies that we have. As you may know, we are 30 plus years in the support of Infor, now called SXE, or Cloud Suite Distribution ERP solution. So that's mostly the elements that are on the left side of the screen, both the standard package for SXE along with the different components that are a part of the stack. On the right side is complementary and add-on offerings that we have for SXE, including business intelligence tool and EDI, taxing, a tax software as well, along with the billing, etc. And many of you may know we're Infor Alliance partner. We were the first one that Infor ever signed up as an Alliance partner, which means we also do direct support for the Infor direct accounts as well. Move on to the next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the ROI or the value of hosting from a business perspective. And these are just simple, but we'll call out. One of the big benefits of hosting, of course, is the fact that you've got elasticity in your infrastructure. So we know many of our distribution clients go through a variety of different changes in their business, which can significantly impact their infrastructure, not the least of which might be acquisitions of different companies or possibly being acquired by another company, adding new products and so forth that may all of a sudden substantially increase the compute power needs of your organization. Now, with a hosted solution, you've got the ability to quickly adjust your infrastructure as needed, as opposed to what may take months or sometimes even over a year to absorb, an acquired company or to change infrastructure for consistency standpoint as well. What we do with this particular service, like our other services, is basically sign a 36-month agreement and payments are made monthly. So you're able to change from a heavy capital expenditure, which is what most companies are used to with on-prem infrastructure, to a nice manageable monthly fee. There's not a large upfront investment, therefore, and you basically pay for what you use. So you can add or reduce compute power as needed. A few things that are very specific to Green Cloud that I want to call out, and there'll be more detail of this throughout the webinar, but Green Cloud is an enterprise-grade infrastructure. We felt that that was critically important for our customers and our prospects because you all are highly dependent upon your ERP solution. If that ERP system is down for any particular period of time, you feel that impact dramatically. So we wanted to make sure we partnered with an organization that had a very solid infrastructure in place. And some of the elements that speak to that is the fact that it is all Cisco equipment, the routers, the switches, etc. It's VMware, standard state drives as well for storage and so forth. And the data centers that are used are here in the United States, and they're across the country, so that they're not concentrated in any one specific geography. All that speaks to uptime, which will be called out a little bit later in the session, but those are things that are very important. One of the big advantages, I would say, that kind of distinguishes this solution from many of you may be looking at upgrading to Cloud Suite as well, which of course is Infor solution for the cloud. One of the big advantages of going with a hosted solution is the fact you, in essence, are able to migrate to a on-prem license of Web UI or some other more advanced form of SXE, and still get the benefits of hosting. And that's what this solution's all about. So you can stay in control of your releases and when those take place. If you happen to migrate to Cloud Suite, one of the things you need to be aware of for that particular option is the fact that you don't have control over the updates and upgrades. They occur for everybody all at one time, and that's the only real manageable way to do a Cloud Suite type solution. So this gives you, some advantages that migrating to Cloud Suite distribution might not. We'll advance to the next slide. So this is who I am. I'm NSA's Vice President of Sales. There's my contact information on the screen. Both my direct mobile line is there along with my email address. And if you have any questions that follow this event and you'd like to take next steps, which I'll come back to and talk to more at the end, please feel free to do that. Advance one more. So our primary guest speaker today, I'm very pleased that he's able to join us, is John Phillipston from GreenCloud. He's their Senior VP of Sales. And just a little bit about Jonathan before he kind of kicks us off. He was recently promoted in September to Senior Vice President of Sales. He was at GreenCloud for 5.5 years prior as the VP of Sales. He manages a channel partners, lead generation, and a variety of other activity all around helping to build the customer base for GreenCloud. He's been in the technology sales arena for over 22 years, and that includes former roles as Director of Business Development for EDTS Inc., as well as Director of Sales for Windstream Communications. And he holds his graduate degree from Appalachian State University. With that, I would like to go ahead and turn over to Jonathan and let him kick off our webinar for today.
Thank you, Brian. Do appreciate that, and for the warm introduction. And for those of you on the bridge, on the webinar, who may have heard about GreenCloud, or for those of you who potentially have not, GreenCloud, as a whole, from a distribution strategy, we only sell through our channel resellers. So they are the ones that distribute and sell our products. With that said, even though GreenCloud isn't necessarily a household name, we've been in the cloud business for a while now. So we started in 2011, and as you can imagine, at that time, the cloud-based technologies were out there, but really people were fine-tuning the skill. What drove us down a roadmap that makes us significantly different from just any other cloud provider is the fact that we are a Cisco certified cloud platform, of which we started very, very early on in our business model to adhere to that. And so what that means in plain English is that every data center is all built on Cisco UCS architecture. So both for the mid-size to big organizations, they all know that you are built on best of breed technology, leveraging VMware software at its core. And as Brian mentioned, our storage arrays are all built on SSD flash, which is great from a performance standpoint. Through the United States, Brian mentioned that we were here in the US, and that is accurate. And we have data centers as far east as the Carolinas, and as far west as Phoenix, Arizona. And as you can imagine, they are scattered through the US. So geographically, depending on where your clients and your offices would be, we could minimize any latency concerns and align the data centers with the expectations of the business. With those data centers spread throughout the United States, as you can imagine, we help our partners and the end users devise strategies to both be geo-redundant as well as diverse. So from a production and disaster recovery plan, even backup strategies, we can help you obviously leverage multiple data centers to basically right-size where your budget and risk tolerance collide. Now, the word cloud technologies That's been around for quite some time. At the end of the day, not everybody is going to do everything and everything great if they say they're going to be a jack of all trades. We at GreenCloud, we completely support our partners on 4 fundamentally core concepts when it comes to cloud-based solutions. The first of which is infrastructure as a service, or cloud-based servers. And those servers can be carved in a multi-tenant environment, and those can also be spec'd out in a private host infrastructure, of which you can have as much control over the environment as you possibly would want. The other product suites that we offer are backups, disaster recovery products, as well as virtual desktops. So I just wanted to make sure everybody had a clear understanding as far as where we fell within the space. And obviously, our friends at NSA distribute the products to make sure that their clients' goals align with the products accordingly. And not to make any assumptions, but not to jump ahead, way ahead. Like I mentioned, the cloud-based solutions have been around for a while. We fine-tuned and honed things accordingly over the years. But at the core of it, fundamentally, it's off-premise compute, right? And with that being said, the adoption rate over the past, call it 5 to 10 years, has drastically escalated. In the mid-market space, we're seeing certain forms of cloud-based solutions drive the behavior, i.e., there's plenty of line of business applications that are driving the behavior for us to take a look at our businesses, both from a management and IT standpoint, and just from a goals to make sure that, where the solutions are taking us, the goals of the business are aligned with that. So, for example, Office 365 is a good Microsoft example that has driven a very large adoption rate for us all to ask ourselves questions such as, well, what do we do with the rest of our infrastructure? And that's just one example of a line of business app that has taken us very much off premise. But as you support your businesses from a bring your own device management policy, that also has driven demand. And in the mid-market space alone to bigger enterprise spaces, there's greater than a 90% adoption rate for some sort of cloud-based computing. And obviously, you can't turn on the news anymore without running into some security breach or compliance driven headline, if you will. And so with that being said, it's forcing us all to look inwardly as to how we are running our organizations and ultimately asking the question, should we turn to other organizations and potentially platforms that could fulfill a higher level of security, higher level of compliance, and ultimately shift the way in which we are spending our money, i.e. CapEx to OpEx. So, with that being said, the Internet of Things, and that there's a large buzz around that in particular, which obviously is forcing the hand, if not organizationally as a whole, but from department to department within organizations, that's driving a lot of conversations as to what we do next. Obviously, we have choices today, whether we subscribe to the software as a service platform, we fully take our environment, outside, or as Brian mentioned, the Cloud Suite Infor platform as it stands, or do you take the web UI where you can localize it and take advantage of some hosting services that allow you to have a little bit more control in terms of upgrades, etc. So obviously, the end goal behind any of the NSA GreenCloud partnerships is to ultimately deliver the best solutions that are right for the goals of the business. But the key drivers here are, how do we administer from a single pane of glass our entire environment versus localizing everything, and obviously taking advantage of geo-redundancy, multiple data centers, multiple different internet carriers per tenant, and at the end of the day, having the utmost control. However, when we are picking partners and platforms to go to, there's so many choices that are out there today. And it's, quite frankly, it is very much our responsibility to ask ourselves some very key questions. Key questions would be, do our businesses align with the type of cloud platforms that are out there? And by the way, all of which have a certain niche that they fill. They are all very good at what they do, but I break them down to almost 3 different pillars of cloud-based services, if you will. The first is what Green Cloud is, and that is what I call a subscription-based model. And then there are other platforms out there, such as the elastic model, and then, of course, the utility-based model. All 3 of which, I will say, are elastic in its own right, meaning they can scale up and down. However, it is how you consume the services that are drastically different. Where this all goes back to a common thread is obviously serving the needs of any institution, rather small or large, but also we need to tie into how it fits financially within our business models. So for example, the subscription-based model allows us to subscribe to X amount of, and I'll use infrastructure as a service, for example, X amount of servers based on the amount of compute, RAM, and storage, and that's what I would be billed for. And so unless that the numbers change, I have a predictable billing model that I can adhere to. The elastic model, the clearly elastic model, is typically the model where I'm going to use it and I'm willing to pay premiums for some of those services, but they're more of an on-demand. They're available when I need them, and I can turn up and turn down those at any given time. I think of a software development shop that may have a project that would last, 1.5 to 2.5 days. That's a perfect example where an Amazon Web Services could fulfill the need for that. Lastly, the utility-based model are cloud-based platforms that act almost as a traditional, electrical model. And so I'm going to pay for what I use when I use it, but when I'm not using those resources, I'm not billed for it. The net long of the short is we want to make sure that if we want to move to all cloud, we want to make sure that the way that we're paying for those business models align with how we actually pay and subscribe to things within our businesses. Also, we need to ask ourselves how is the support structured, and ask ourselves internally, do we have the support to run in any one of the different methodologies, or do we need to potentially outsource some of that? Or furthermore, does that provider have support services for us? And then to take it a step farther, obviously we need to figure out what SLAs we have for our internal employees and clients, and then also the SLAs that we have for our clients. So how much downtime can we sustain? i.e., it all backs into risk tolerance and ultimately our budgets. So there's tons of considerations. However, we're moving into 2019. Right now, financially, we're probably at the most affordable time to take a look at cloud-based options as it's not only evolved but matured over time. And obviously, we're in a position where we can take advantage of some of the more, what I would consider to be enterprise-grade security solutions that are out there that are offered through these solutions providers. The top of the list, like I mentioned, and if you turn on the news, if you look at any publication, there's always security that's out there that's being looked at as a fine-tooth comb. So if we're going to go off premise, we need to ask our service providers about their certifications. And it's great that we ask them about their certifications, but we need to take one extra step, and that is verifying that they're actually adhering to the certs that they say that they have and the compliances that they are adhering to. But it is also, for me to tell you guys, If you are under certain compliance needs of your own, and you're governed based on whatever businesses that you are in to align those certifications and compliance needs with your service provider. Once again, I'll go back to billing, quite frankly. The manner in which you have the ability to scale and go to market with cloud services translates to how you would be billed, and the pricing model needs to align with that. So make sure, as you are really uncovering the needs of your business and uncovering what solution providers have to offer, that it's scalable according to how you do business. And obviously, as Brian mentioned, if you're looking at an OpEx versus a CapEx model, it is a great time to do it. And then from a support perspective, obviously we're all stretched very thin in the world of supporting our employees and clients. We want to make sure that from a migration strategy, we have enough people that can assist with that. If we're going to go completely off premise, do we have the networking staff on our teams to make sure that everything is properly networked and they can also minimize downtime? Or do we integrate and align ourselves with a service provider who potentially has those offerings? And at the end of the day, we obviously are trying to probably look at some offerings because of the agility aspect of cloud. Cloud brings to us both the opportunity to scale up and scale down, but we also need to think through this as, are we scaling for growth or are we scaling for risk? And what I mean by that is, if you are presented with some acquisition targets, can you scale accordingly and as fast as you possibly can? Because that's what cloud obviously affords you. So to talk through some real life examples of how Green Cloud has worked with organizations in the mid to big enterprise sector. CSS Industries is an organization that is in very much merger and acquisition mode. They have a multiple line of business applications that are driving their business that range from your traditional Windows-based apps to IBM applications. But if they are constantly buying companies, they don't have enough time to slow down to overhaul their data centers in order to keep integrating one acquisition after another. So this is an organization that moved 100% of their day-to-day operations to one of Green Cloud's data centers and was able to attach its dependencies to the other line of business apps, such as the IBM workloads and any other applications that they needed. So we cohabitate with a lot of line of business apps that are just outside of Green Cloud that range in scope. Like I mentioned, one was IBM, the other would be a lot of Microsoft and Windows apps and software applications. So they also needed the ability, based on SLAs that they had with their end users, to be up 100% of the time. So this client not only built production out in one of the data centers, but are leveraging another data center in the event of a catastrophic event, both at the production side as well as the internet side, and have also brought in some of their own networking gear to fast track the amount of uptime in the event of any disaster whatsoever. Another organization that comes to mind is a very large manufacturing facility that's actually based in the Carolinas, but have 13 manufacturing facilities out of the Midwest. These 13 facilities supply plastics to companies that you probably are very familiar with that range from Toro, the lawnmower and engine organization, to Volkswagen and Hyundai, and some other folks that you probably know. But they are billed by their end users in the event that they can't access and ship just-in-time plastics to the manufacturing facilities. With that said, here's an organization that chose to keep all production workload on site, but replicate to a GreenCloud data center. Once again, they're also leveraging other cloud-based services for backup services. So it's not an all or nothing cloud solution. They're leveraging multiple different options to achieve their strategy. So with this being said, and this is where I'm going to turn it back over to Brian, acquiring cloud solutions. Obviously, the NSA folks are going to tell you how you can go about acquiring cloud-based options to fulfill the goals of the business. So with that being said, Brian, I'll kick it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Very good information in that session here. A couple things that Jonathan had mentioned. One was the adoption rates and how dramatically they're growing. And we certainly see that among our customer base. As a matter of fact, our most recent client was brought on board with GreenCloud just a few weeks ago. So it's something that we're seeing on a regular, continual basis. We've had nothing but really good satisfaction with the clients that are running in this particular platform environment. As Jonathan did mention, this is my contact information, and I would ask that you do just contact me following the webinar in regards to what your needs may happen to be, or what things you happen to be looking at, and what you might be considering as far as your future potential upgrades are concerned. I can tell you that NSA has been extremely busy over the past year with upgrades. So that's, I think that the timing may work very well for many of the clients that are on this particular call. As Jonathan had mentioned, if you're in acquisition mode or growth mode, those are signs that maybe hosting is something to give a consideration to. As many of you are aware, if you are looking to migrate to a more current version of SXC, it's going to require more compute power than what you're utilizing today. And that's been the driver for many of our customers that have ultimately chosen to then go ahead and do, use GreenCloud for hosting, as opposed to buying the new infrastructure that they would need to be able to support that environment. With that, Jonathan, if you would advance to the next slide. So anyone that's been on our prior professional services series sessions knows that we usually almost always have some type of a promotion that's tied to the webinar that you're attending. And GreenCloud has been gracious enough to allow us to be able to do that as well for this particular solution. So what we're offering for anyone that's on the webinar today is an upgrade of storage from the standard storage to the premium storage, which is the solid state drives that we had spoken about earlier. I can tell you that the prior installations that we've done, we've always included the solid state drives for customers just because of the reliability that's a part of that. Well, GreenCloud's been gracious enough to say, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and include premium storage at the normal cost of standard storage for anyone that's on this webinar today. In addition to that, you're able to take it 25% off of the initial setup fee for a 36-month agreement, which is our standard agreement that we have. We also understand that this is not the type of solution that companies decide upon overnight. It's a drastic change for many clients that have had nothing but on-prem solutions for probably the entire life of their business. So it does take some thought, some evaluation, and we can work with you through that. Because we understand it takes some time, this particular promotion won't expire until the end of June in 2019. So you have a lot of time to be able to take a look at this and assess it. But I would still suggest that if you're looking at it, that we do get started, relatively near term, so that we're not up against it, at the very end of the 11th hour, if this is something you really want to consider. With that, I'd like to go ahead and invite anyone that has questions to certainly utilize the chat button that's on your screen. If you have questions that you'd like to ask, Jonathan's here to be able to answer those questions. We have allotted time for question and answer if anyone's interested in doing that. And I'll invite you to do that at this time, and we'll just wait a minute or two, see if we get any questions that may come in. While we're waiting on any questions to possibly come in from any of the attendees, I will just mention yet again that the session was recorded, and the recording of the session will be sent to all the attendees on today's session, sometime within the next 24 to 48 business hours. And I would ask that, you feel free to share that with anyone within the company. And Jonathan, it does look like we do have one chat question. It's, does OpEx allow subscription fees?
And so, yes, so from a subscription fee, I could take that as a couple different ways. One would be licensing. Is that kind of what we're thinking?
Yes, that's what Sherry's asking.
Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely it does. So depending on whether it's multi-tenant in a hosting environment or whether it's a private host, you have a couple different options. Typically, service providers can supply you, GreenCloud specifically, can supply you with your licensing needs in both multi-tenant and private. If someone has a private host infrastructure, they have the ability to more readily and more easily bring in certain licensing. However, our friends at Microsoft have been a little bit easier these days to bring licensing in depending on the level of your software assurance agreement that you may have, or if you're a 365 user, the type of 365 user you are.
Yeah, and I'll pile onto that just a little bit as well, Sherry. So as I mentioned, that we've utilized GreenCloud for other existing NSA clients and prospects. So we have also had that transfer capability with Infor, with SXE, with whatever version they happen to need to be able to be hosted. It's an excellent question. Any other questions that might be out there that the folks attending are thinking about? Okay, can you touch on how having a DR solution would help in an electrical outage? I think that's a great question. Jonathan, did you want to address that?
I'd be more than happy to. So I'll leverage the one account that I referenced, the plastics manufacturer. That's a great example where a production data center was left physically where it was near home base. It's near their headquarter office. And in the event of an electrical outage, Wilbert Plastics, in this case, would be running, up and running within GreenCloud. So we offer software technologies that allow for us to replicate between our data centers and your production environments. And not to get too technical, but at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're replicating every virtual machine that's within your environment over to us as real time as physically possible. And when I say physically possible, a lot of that has to do with the amount of data and the amount of rate of change within someone's environment. But the net, it allows you to have a restoral point objective and a restoral time objective that would fulfill the need of your organization. So in Wilbert's case, if they had a power outage and declared a disaster and they replicated and they failed over to us, they would be up within minutes. And from a restoral point, so the restoral point being defined as the point in time in which the last replication took place, it would be in sync within minutes. So as you're probably potentially asking yourself, well, how do I fail over in the event that I don't have power? So you would have administrative tools at your fingertips that could be administered via a laptop, a cell phone. You don't necessarily need to be on your corporate network in order to fail over. So hope that addressed it, but it comes down to the software technology that we utilize to build those disaster recovery plans.
And I'll just mention on that note as well that we actually have our go-to DR solution that we've utilized with a number of clients. And we've had a mix of some of those customers that have gone over to GreenCloud and they're able to continue to use their existing DR solution as well, the failover that they had bought when their solution was on-prem through NSA. And also GreenCloud has their go-to disaster recovery solution as well. And we've got clients that are on that also. So you've got flexibility as far as the actual DR solution itself. And Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind just touching a little bit on the data centers within GreenCloud and what GreenCloud has done to help ensure your uptime during an electrical outage, and the failovers that you have, and the power choices that exist. Should you lose just your regular electric power at any of those data centers?
No, great. That's great. So to take a step back and kind of visualize, as I mentioned, we're as far east as the Carolinas and as far west as Phoenix. In between, all of the data centers that we actually reside in are not owned by GreenCloud. And once again, what you get with GreenCloud is 100% transparency. And the reason for that is there is enough real estate in data centers. There's a lot of empty space in data centers, needless to say. So we have aligned ourselves with 6 individually owned different data centers that are going to be very familiar in names, such as Peak 10, QTS, the list goes on and on. Long story short, they are all tier 3 facilities, of which they are all served by different power companies. So there's one piece of diversity. Secondly, they all have, as you can imagine, battery generators. They have their own diesel generators on site. Tier 3 facilities have an A and a B power coming into the facility. And as you can imagine, each facility has an abundance of internet connectivity. However, we GreenCloud are also bringing our own internet peering arrangements into the data centers. So in the event that the internet links going directly to the data centers are cut, there's a good chance that the other lines that we're bringing in are not severed. So since we're utilizing multiple peering arrangements, we also use what is called BGP peering, which allows us to fail from one provider over to another. So in the event that the internet went out, we could merely fail over from one internet peer to another. Nothing is foolproof in this day and age to people with backhoes digging up internet lines. But at the end of the day, we're trying to make it as foolproof as possible. We, as a organization, replicate our facilities from one data center to another, and we offer to our clients that if you're in production in one of those environments, you have the ability to do that as well. So once again, baking in the foolproof SLA that we are providing for you, the Cisco UCS architecture that GreenCloud is designed on is also built on high availability. So we fully believe in what we call an N+1 model, where all production is built on a series of hosts, and we have additional hosts to support the production environment. So even if the technology breaks, there's a backup plan there to be working at the same time as we're working through any issues. Brian, did that answer that?
No, that was great, Jonathan. And I'll just share that, since we've been working with GreenCloud, the clients that we have had, they've had 0 interruptions. So I mean, it's been very solid, for the clients that we've had on this particular solution since we've started with them. Very good questions. Any other thoughts or any other questions from anyone before we wrap? Excellent. Well, Sherry, thank you for those excellent questions. I know that if you had them, others did as well. So appreciate you calling out those particular pieces. Again, I would invite you to take advantage of this special promotional offer that GreenCloud has. If you've been thinking about possibly looking into hosting as an option as you upgrade or might have acquisitions on the horizon, that there's certainly incentive out there as well to maybe take a look at it sooner rather than later. And I would more than welcome your contact, and we can certainly engage and explore that together. With that, I will give you back the rest of your hour. You've got a little over 10 minutes remaining here in the hour. And I thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy days to attend the session, and look for your follow-up thank you email, which will have the recorded session. And again, please reach out to me if I can help you one-on-one to assess what your needs might be in this particular area. And I also want to thank our friends at Green Cloud for being very gracious hosts today of the session. And Jonathan and Kendall and Phil, I want to thank all of you very much for all your participation in setting things up and running things today.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.